And good afternoon from Philadelphia. Frank here with another episode of UFO News Network Sunday. And today we've got a very special guest, Christopher Bledsoe. He's going to be discussing his experiences with the UFO phenomenon and some of the people who are also very much interested in it. And he's taken a little bit of a break from doing interviews, and he's back with us. So, Chris, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Doing great, Frank. Thank you. Hope you're doing well.
Yep. So far, so good. We're ready to go. The stream looks healthy. We always like it when there are no technical difficulties. So let's get right down to it, Chris. Let's not beat around the bush. You've taken a little bit of a break from doing interviews, and now you're back. And can you explain to the folks at home a little bit why you took the break in the first place and why you're back now and nice enough to come on our show?
Well, that's kind of has more than one part. The reason I took a break, the main reason, I guess, or two main reasons, was that I don't like speculating. And in this UFO world, everybody speculates. They have every idea in the book of what we're dealing with, and really most of the speculation is unfounded. They don't have the experiences. So for me and my family, it has been ever increasing. The activity is been off the charts. And I'm able to document it, and a lot of people know this. And so I'm trying to figure this thing out for myself, and I just don't want to speculate to the public claiming one thing when it's something different. And two, I've been involved in a Hollywood project for the better part of 7 years, and it's gotten fairly serious with serious people. And they've asked me not to be public a whole lot. So that's really the main reason that I've kind of been in the shadow.
And why is the time right for you to come back and start talking again?
Well, Dr. Pasulka is involved in this, Dr. Diana Pasulka. She's involved in the television series that we're kind of working on. And we were both not talking about this at all until her book was published this past year, February. And the studio thought it was, or the writers thought it was okay now that I could start talking a little bit. And so that's basically why I'm out. Just poking my head up. It's not that I'm going to do this every day, but you know what I'm saying? I'm here to talk a bit.
Got it. And with the show now, you had mentioned to me when we spoke earlier that this is going to be a dramatization, not a documentary. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, a little bit. It's a television series based on a true story, and it's, the way it's working is Dr. Pasulka's involved in her book, and basically my family and my life story, and how we met, how she and I came across one another many years ago, and the interaction with her students coming. She would bring students to the house, and a lot of stuff. She's a study partner and a real good one, and that's kind of all I can say. I don't want to say who's doing it, but it's some of the biggest folks in all of Hollywood. And if it does go into production, they're thinking it'll be 3 or 4 years and maybe 12 episodes a year. That's what I'm hearing. But
understood.
All I can say.
Now, you and Dr. Pasulka crossed paths initially at a conference, if I remember her account accurately, that you were having these experiences and already out there sharing it with folks. And can you tell us a little bit about that initial meeting?
Yeah, I think this was like in 2011 when we met, or 12. I had been very quiet for 5 years and never wanted to speak about it, and all because of what happened when the incident on the river happened in 2007, January the 8th, 2007. It was a really traumatic thing, and it put the whole family in turmoil. And the first 5 years I called 5 years of darkness, because my kids were little. I'm 58 years old, and my daughter, she's teaching music at New York University right now. So she's getting her master's there while she's teaching undergrads. But she was 10 when this happened. And all my children going to public school were getting ridiculed, and they'd come home crying, and I started feeling like I shouldn't have never said anything, but I could not hold it back, because truth is truth. But it turned into me regretting ever saying anything, because it's the public. The public ridicules people for seeing lights. You say, I saw lights in the sky, they call you crazy. Well, I've come to find out that they're just uninformed, and I can prove them all wrong. All of them, anybody. I have the proof. And 5 years after it happened, I got a call. Actually, what happened was I had an experience. These experiences were growing. I had an experience with this beautiful being. That there was a painting made by Doug Auld from New York, made a painting by her, about her. But long story short, she came and she told me that I had to tell this story to the public, to tell what it is I know, and to stop hiding. This is basically what she told me. And so I agreed. And there's a whole lot more to this than I'm saying, a whole lot more. But what happened was, the way I described her, it got the attention of a lot of people, all the way up towards the Vatican. And even Washington, D.C. But so we met in a conference. That's what made me want to speak, because she came. I had this experience, and I decided at that point, okay, I'm going to start talking again. Within 2 weeks, I was in a MUFON conference in Asheville, and there she was, Dr. Pasalka.
And sorry about that. Keep going.
And when I described what it was, I wanted to talk about what had just happened in 2012, this experience with these beings and this beautiful woman. And the crowd didn't want to hear it. They thought that they wanted to hear the river experience that happened 5 years earlier, where I ran from that. I hate talking about the past. It brings up too many sad times with my children and family and all the pressures that happen. So I was talking about this new experience. Well, they started heckling me, and couldn't believe it, and she couldn't believe it. Well, long story short, it started a very good relationship of studying together and learning together. And I introduced her to some people that were very high-level individuals. One in her book she calls Tyler. That was me that introduced her to that. And I've been behind the scenes, very low-key, not stirring up any attention towards myself, because of the things I was involved in, and still to this day are. Stuff people have no clue that exists.
And the catalyst for the you contacted MUFON initially. Is that about right? Yeah. That you turned to them first with your experiences.
I did. I turned to them in 2007. It happened on January 8th, 2007. I was fishing with my son and 3 other guys that were subcontractors, and we just finished up a big project on the beach. And I was suffering with Crohn's disease. I had been for 17 years, and I had recently gone through 2 years before a near-death experience from toxic blood poisoning, from too much medication. So I was pretty down on myself and down on life, and I had to sell my business. I had a flourishing construction business, building 100 homes a year. Was named Businessman of the Year in 2005, I think. So we were going, or four. We were going pretty strong, and my sickness had me so bad I couldn't get out of bed for 2 years. I was that sick, and my empire was just crumbling down. And that's when we sold the company, or my wife did, while I was in the hospital, believe it or not. And it led to a near death then. And then 2 years later is when this thing happened on the river. I was at my last hope. I have to say, I was ready to give up on life. And I'd left my friends fishing and my son and walked away about a quarter mile up a path to a field to try to, and my thoughts, I was like, Lord, I want to die. Whoever's up there, I don't know who's up there, but somebody listen. What am I going to do? I'm 46. I have 4 children. I can't feed them. I'm sick. I can't work. I can't hold a job. And this is what I was thinking.
Sure.
And when I got to the top of that hill, we were down in a really remote place on the river fishing. I walked away and up out of the river bottom to a cornfield. When I got up there, there were 2 big, fiery, orange balls of fire. They were a quarter mile or less away and just above the trees good. And I'm a commercial pilot. That was my profession for about 12 years. And I quit that and went into the building business because of having so many children, 4 children, and I had to stay home. I couldn't travel. But I knew what I was looking at. I knew it wasn't from here. And it looked like a sun, just like the sun when it sets late in the evening just before dark, when you can look at it with your eyes and it doesn't hurt, and it's big and orange and beautiful. That's the way they look. There were 2 of them. And it scared me. And so I turned and I looked behind me like I'm going to run. And I squatted down. I had a hill still. I was climbing a hill so I could hide from it, thinking I was hiding. And I turned to look back. And my thoughts were, I'm fixing to run. I'm going back to where my son is. And I looked back, and my body was turned downhill, all in the same motion. And when I looked back up to see, and I popped my head up from behind the hill to see these 2 fiery balls, well, that very second, a third one came from up high in plain sight, and it came out of nowhere, like a hole, just appeared, and boom, in 1 second, it was down beside the other 2. And next thing I remember, 4.5 hours later, I come walking up to the fire. And it was 4.5 hours of missing time, and it ensued into more and more. I mean, my son was hiding. He was out looking for me. The 3 fishermen, they had been hunting for me for hours, driving the truck in and out and walking. And my son was lost in the forest. He'd gone in on foot looking for me. And when I got back to the fire, I asked where Chris Jr. was. They said, we don't know. He went in the woods and he's lost. He hadn't come back. And so I kind of freaked out, and I ran right on by him. And I went to the back of the cul-de-sac. We were down in a little dead-end cul-de-sac. And they had gone out looking for me. One guy staying at the fire, and my son went down in the forest. And when I found him, I was shouting for him. He was in shock. He was laying down under the thickest shrubs, hiding, because he had seen these red orbs out away from him. And this is a long story. I could talk for hours on this one part. It was a TV show made about it, UFOs over Earth, and they didn't give a third of the information that was there. And I was very angry about that, but it's all good now.
Well, that was a MUFON based show. And how soon after this incident did you decide to contact them?
I contacted them 10 months after it happened. It happened January the 7th of 2000, January the 8th of 2007, I'm sorry. And my wife thought I had lost it, for one, because I'm talking about UFOs and lights, and I'd never thought about stuff like that. Remember, I built 100 homes a year and was very sick. And she just thought that I was seeing things. There's no way. Nobody wanted to believe me. My mom, my dad, and I wanted to talk to somebody, and I didn't know who to talk to. And I struggled and struggled. I didn't have television. I still don't to this day. I don't subscribe to television. So I didn't even have internet then. Well, I finally got internet in the summertime or late fall, and noticed that there was a Ancient Aliens show, or one of those shows, UFO shows on TV, and Stanton Friedman was on there. And in my simple mind, I thought, Lord, if he can talk about it publicly, I'm going to too. And I really thought I was going to be divorced if I reported it or talked any more about it, because my kids were so scared and they were coming home and frightened, and my wife was protecting the children.
Sure.
So I got their number off of the television, and I went on the internet and I pulled up their reporting form, and I did the report. And I waited 2 weeks in agony thinking, if I send this, I'm going to be divorced. That's how bad it was. But I was about to, I could not think. If I tried to remember, I had the worst headache because of whatever happened to me. I had a memory block. I could not think backwards at all. If I did, it was a terrible, terrible migraine. But I reported it finally October, 10 months later. And within a week, 2 days, I got a call from California. We want to come see you. We want to send an investigator. I freaked out. I'm like, no, I can't do that. I'm sorry. I backpedaled. And it went on back and forth with them trying to get to see me until January, when they were going to close the case. And I agreed to let their local guy come. And when he came, he saw the evidence on the ground. The grass was burnt, and a lot of things, witnesses. There were other witnesses, a lot of witnesses. And within 3 days, there was a group, after he came, the first investigator, within 3 or 4 days, they had people from headquarters, from New York or Maryland. There were like 5 or 6 investigators were at my house immediately. And they talked me into doing this show, and I agreed because I wanted to prove that it really happened, that there were lights in the sky. And that didn't turn out like I wanted it to, because they kind of, they held back evidence. They made it look like I was lying when that was far from the case. And so that's what put me in the 5 years. What they did caused me to be the laughing stock of the community. And that's a fact. And it injured my family, my children, and the whole thing. And you know what? It's okay now, because I understand it was all cover up back then. But today, it's all about what are we dealing with. It's not about is it real anymore. And that's kind of why I'm talking.
Understood. Yeah, I remember that show, and yeah, I mean they to be blunt about it, they didn't make you look good at all. But regardless of all that, some other folks, some folks who were connected through, at that point in time, Robert Bigelow was basically offering up some funding to MUFON. And your case, I guess, got his attention, and then from there it got the attention of a number of very significant insiders. And can you tell the folks at home a little bit about that process? When did they start making contact with you?
Well, I don't know how much of this is still sensitive, but Some of it is, but I can say we were the first case. That's kind of what sparked this whole thing with Bigelow and the government funding the millions, 14 million or whatever it was, dollars. I was the first case, my family, and it was kind of mobilized all because of that, from what I understand. Some folks in Washington, as high as it gets, told me that they knew who I was the day it was published, the day I reported it, and that they wanted to come see me. And it was because of the things that I reported, how it happened, what I saw, and these little beings. They were glowing little beings. They looked like ghosts, 3 feet tall. I actually have a photo and a video, a couple of photos and a couple of videos of these beings walking. I just can't release them, but I have it. And the one that was so close to me, I could see through the glow on its chest. It was 3 or 4 feet away. It had a triangle on its chest, like a triangle underneath this glow. I could see it. And I drew it. And when I reported that, it wasn't long, I get a call from my son. I'm talking days after I reported it. There's a knock at the door. And my son said, Dad, there's a guy here from NASA. I said, Lord, well, nobody told me they were coming. He said he didn't. He said he just got in his car and came to North Carolina. And so I said, tell him to wait till I get there. I'll be home in an hour or so. Well, I got home, and that same guy is coming to spend Thanksgiving with me next week after, as soon as Thanksgiving. He's coming, he and his wife. And he's still active. He still has his clearances. He's been there 60 years. So all the while, they did a good job of making me look like I was lying, and it took the attention off. And that's all good because I learned a lot. But for the last 12 years, I've had the opportunity to meet people, to work behind the scenes on some things like technologies. Diana talks about that a little bit. And I just have a group of people behind me and around me that I'm not afraid of the government. I'm afraid of the people. It's the people that don't believe. It's the UFO world that wants to criticize and debunk everything. But there are people that really know the truth, and they're really helpful. They just want to know what's happening. They don't know, there's a lot of theories. The government has this and all these things hidden. Well, that couldn't be further from the truth. From my experience, I haven't seen any of that or heard of it, and I just don't know as I believe it because of some of the things I've done and places I've been. I think they're more innocent, and they want to know just as bad as you and I.
Now, when you first had the fellow from NASA visit you, was it kind of a relief at first, or were you not really trustworthy after the bad experience with the MUFON TV show? Or at what point in time did you say to yourself, finally, we're making some headway here?
I still hadn't said finally, because I've had people come to my house threatening to kill me and my wife and children in my face, publicly, and right in front of me, tell my wife, we'll kill you if you share any of this information we got. And they're not government. There's a people that I'm more worried about, people that are non-government, you see. Okay. So I call friends in the government to say, help me. But there's no feeling comfortable in this. All because I reported lights in the sky, I have to worry about the safety of my family. Think about that.
Sure.
It's all because of a narrative. People want to drive a narrative about what it is the world is experiencing, when they're really coming to me wanting to know what it is I'm experiencing, and can I share this? You see, it's just there's two sides of this thing, and I don't know. It's all Diana talks about it. She's been threatened as well. when you start getting near facts or sensitive stuff, we just have to be real careful. And that's why I don't do a lot of talking about it.
Understood. Understood. So as time passed, they bring you in. I mean, are they flying you to these different locations and asking you to take a look at this, take a look at that? What do you think? How is that process going? Are they bringing the stuff to you, or are you going to them? How is all that working?
I've been all over the place. I get a phone call and say you need to be here or meet me here at this place, or and they come to me. I mean, it's just like you would once you get to know these folks. They're just wonderful people that want to know the truth, just like you and I. And they have a job to do, and they can't really share it, and nobody will never know who these folks are ever. I couldn't share it, and they don't want to be shared. But trust me, there's a I don't, I have to be careful.
Sure.
Right. But it's not the government that that I think is I don't know how to say this. I just don't think they know what we think they know.
Okay, got it. Now, obviously, there was something in the content of your initial report that got the attention of these folks. Have they ever shared what that was? And if they did, can you share that with our listeners?
Well, yeah. The triangle on the little being's chest was a big deal. I reported orbs. I didn't report a flying saucer, and that was the thing. Up until 2007, it was all triangles. If you remember, it was all black triangles and flying saucers. Well, I don't think one has been reported since I reported these orbs, some 12, 13 years ago. But they were orbs, huge, fiery, orange fireballs. It looked like the fire was rotating clockwise and around it, and flames shooting off of it. And they're big as a school bus, 40 foot around. I think TTSA calls them Tic Tacs.
Okay.
Same thing. I described it exactly the same as what Tom and his group is talking about. Same thing. You come out of the ocean, they fly up the Cape Fear River, and that's the direction they came from. But that's got their attention. The size of what I reported, the little beings and what they had on their chest, and how they appeared, things that went on with me. That one thing, Frank, without speculating, is the evidence. I have a lot of evidence, and I can put it on websites out there, the real stuff. And in the UFO world, they totally ignore it because they don't want that. They want Pleiadians, and they want Zeta Reticulations and all this kind of stuff. But it's not like that. It doesn't work quite like that. It's different, and I'm still trying to figure it out, along with a whole lot of other smart people. But the data that I have thousands of photos and videos with audio and witnesses, like Colonel John Alexander. He's been in the government 50 years. He just came back from overseas in Kazakhstan and all those places, and he's researching paranormal phenomena, UFOs, when he does that. Well, 47 years of doing that, he came to visit with me and my family, he and his wife Victoria, and he wanted to go down to the river, and I took him down there, and my daughter Emily went. And I know, because she's a little magnet, that they would likely show up with her around. If I'd have taken anybody else, they're kind of pretty shy. They may not show up or appear. But when she's with me, it's like it's me. Because that's kind of an aggravating thing for the longest time. I would go outside and there they would be. And I couldn't get a camera on them. I couldn't take a picture, and I couldn't run in and get my wife and say, come look. It was so aggravating because they'd be gone. Well, 5 years later, when I had that experience and I decided to start speaking, from that point on, I walked out within a few days after that, and there it was, and I got it on video. And from that point on, I've got 5,000 or 6,000 photos and hundreds of videos and witnesses like John. I told John, I said, they're here right now and they're above us. I could sense it. I can feel it. I have a video where you can hear me. I can't hardly breathe when it appears in front of us. Well, it appeared in front of Victoria and John and Emily and I above us. It didn't fly over. It wasn't a satellite. It appeared out of thin air and then zipped off to the south pretty quick. And so just imagine me telling somebody such as John that there's a UFO over me and it's about to appear, and within 10 seconds it does. Imagine what the powers above think about that. I mean, this guy, I'm just throwing out a few clues here, the reason it draws attention, right? It's what John calls a temporal relationship.
John had been on the show, and he'd mentioned that encounter himself, and has nothing but the highest regard for you, said nothing but great things about you. Now, another thing that John had said was he'd spent a lot of time, this is going off topic a little bit, but he had spent a lot of time at Skinwalker Ranch, and all the time he was there, he heard accounts from other people, but didn't have any strange encounters himself while he was there. He comes and spends an evening with you, and all of a sudden he does. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I actually asked for it. Yeah, there's a lot of people like John. He's not the only one. I mean, even in the video, the latest video, I think I sent Chant one this week. I don't know if I sent it to you, but you can see.
No, yeah, she shared it with me. I saw it.
And you hear all the people there talking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it happens, it used to be, remembering before 2012, it wouldn't cooperate. 2012, I had this experience with this beautiful lady and these three beings. And from that point on, my little iPhone camera, people spend thousands and thousands, tens of thousands on lenses and cameras just to get a little light flying across way up like a satellite. I get pictures, still photos, and videos of orbs that are 5 feet away, 15 feet, 20 feet, 400 feet. We're way up in the air like some. I don't even worry about filming those. I get the ones that are close, 200 or 300 yards or closer. I got one over Easter that was for 18 minutes. I filmed this orb that came out of the sky. This was on Easter. I walked out the door, and when I did, these things know I'm here. They know when I open the door, they appear. They're waiting. It doesn't matter where I go. I've been to California with movie producers and their children, and the things fly right over our head 100 feet up. They come on out in the ocean and fly right up to us. And so this orb appears above way up in the sky. It was probably 200 or 300 feet up. And it came straight down, and it looked like a firefly diving to the ground that size, but glowing bright as a LED light, blinking. And when it got to the tops of the trees on the other side of this pond, I live on a private 15 acres with a pond. And my back porch is literally 6 foot from the water. So when I open the door, I'm standing at the water. This thing comes on way up high, and I'm getting a low battery indicator. It comes on way up high and zooms down to, I'm sorry, I'm trying to plug my battery.
No problem. Take your time.
Okay, I think I got it. Okay, it went. So it comes down out of the sky to the trees. gets to the edge of the water on the other side, and by now I'm kind of freaking out because I know it's coming for me. It sees me, and I'm trying to stay away from these orbs as much as I can because I got really sick from it. And that's a whole nother story. Well, when it gets to the water's edge on the other side, it stops for a second, and it's a basketball size, and it's blinking on and off very brightly, erratically. So here it comes across the water now, and it's coming to me. I'm on my knees with my dogs beside me, and I'm scared to move. I'm afraid. And it gets within 20 feet of me, 25 feet. It's over the water, and it's jumping up and down 10 feet high. This orb, it's illuminating a 10-foot area up and down directly over the water. And I can see, I know what it is. It's some sort of entity coming. Well, I filmed it for 18 minutes, and as soon as I pulled the camera out, my cell phone, and when I put it on it, the orb, it knew what I was going to do, and it died down to just an orb that blinks on and blinks off. So for 18 minutes, I got this orb there. And a lot of crazy stuff happened after that. And that's a whole different story, but amazing stuff. There's, and I don't know if I want to get into it too much, but we have a son that could not have babies ever. The University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill said he couldn't, and all of a sudden, he's going to be a father. He has a handicapped child from the girl he's his fiance, and for some reason, for a short while there, he could feel his toes, and he's paralyzed. And my DA score, I have rheumatoid, and I contracted this. Dr. Pasolka and a lot of other people think it's because of the orbs. It happened to Saint Francis in the Vatican, and I mean in the ancient days in Rome or wherever he was from, but Diana was at the Vatican, and went in the secret archives, and they read a lot of stories and stuff, and so they were sending me stuff from the Vatican. They actually had a ceremony there and had it in my honor, and was allowed into the archives. All this would be in the television show if it ever comes about, the whole thing. But St. Francis and others had nothing more than rheumatoid, is what they believe it was, based on today's lens. And it came from being zapped by orbs, being too close to them. I have them right in my face sometimes. They fly right up within inches, feet. And a lot of people see them when they come here, a lot. And a lot of testify to it and have videos. Other people get videos of them appearing and interacting. So that's why so many people in so many places know about this. They know that this is going on. They know that I have this evidence, and a lot of others have been here and witnessed it. Other people from the government, not just John. So,
well, one of the other folks I know that you've had some contact with, who reached out to you, was someone who's stays pretty quiet but is involved and helps run the To the Stars Academy, and that's Jim Semivan. Can you give our listeners some kind of insight in terms of what this guy's all about? Because he's kind of a mysterious guy who doesn't say too much publicly anyway.
Well, I can't say a whole lot about Jim, but I can tell you this. He is a mighty good friend of mine and has been for many years. I've spent Easter with him, with his family, my children. My daughter's in New York. She started there this year. Who's her first visitor? Jim and Deb. They're just wonderful people. He was in the CIA, and he had an experience. And he knew about me right after it was published, 12, 13 years ago. And we finally got to meet, and I don't think he could, long as he was active. But and I don't know if I can say that or not. But he follows the rule, by the rule. And as soon as he retired, we became friends. And I knew about Tom long before Tom's company ever got started. And I know Tom. I'm very good friends with Tom and Lou, Jim. I can't say a whole lot there, but they're very good people and they're very serious, and it's not a scam. What they're doing is dead serious. I think the UFO world believes that there's 7 or 10 star cruisers at Area 51, and why would Tom worry about a piece of metal, right?
Right.
It don't make sense. Well, I don't think they got the star cruisers, but they do have the metal, because I had my hands on some of it, and I actually shared a piece with them. So that's that publicly.
Got it. Now, that as far as the metals go, that is a pretty interesting subject, and it has been of interest to these types of fellows going way back. We had Uri Geller on a few months back, and he discussed, this was, I guess, back in the 70s, maybe the 80s, where, they were bringing pieces that they thought might be of ET origin and having him handle it and get his feedback. So the materials, it's a pretty interesting topic. Now, is there anyone else that you've crossed paths with, besides Diana and Jim and John, that you think the folks might want to hear a little bit more about, that you can talk about?
Well, there's a lot more, but I really can't talk about these people. Remember Diana's book. Read her book. It's a wonderful book, and it's true. It's not fake, what she's saying in there. All of it's very real about the people she met, the crash site she went to, the character Tyler. I introduced her. It took me 3 years to get her to meet these people. She was that nervous of them. And but they're all good folks. I mean, it's all for the good. And I just have to be careful there. I don't feel comfortable.
Understood. Well, you had mentioned meeting Tom, and what did you? What was your impression of him? I mean, were you familiar with his background, with the rock music? And what's a lot of people are thinking, what's this guy involved with all these people for? This is a little bit odd here. Were you familiar with him when you met him, or with the musical background, or was he just a guy who seemed pretty interested? I mean, what were your impressions of Tom?
I think Tom's a wonderful guy. I like him. I can text him. He might be listening. You never know. I know him firsthand. I've been. We've traveled together, right? So he's a good friend, and he's very serious. I don't think he's hiding. I don't know how he could be hiding anything. He's just like you and I, just as a very accomplished star that had an experience that gave him the bug, just like it did me and everybody else that's into this thing. He just has more means to move the ball down the court, and he's that kind of guy. He's genius. Tom is really a very smart person. I mean, very smart. And he got, you might say, zapped, gave him the bug, and nothing else mattered. Music, none of it. He even quit it for a long time. And he got to meet a few people. He made his own way into there. And next thing I know, I'm being told, there's this guy named Tom DeLonge. I'd never heard of him. And they're like, do you want to meet him? And I said, sure. So that's kind of how it started. And he's really in it for, he's in it, it's just in it's his heart. He's serious about it. He's not, in other words, I think it's all legit what he's doing. The study, the research, to find out the truth. I like them. I think they're really serious, and they're trying. Nobody else is, right? We can lead the UFO world for the next 50 years and let them speculate and write book after book. I've never written a book in 12 years because I can't sit here and tell you that this being named, you know, Johnny from the planet this came to my house because, you know, it just wanted to visit me and anal probe me and all this kind of garbage. You know, I just don't, none of that. That's all dark and dirty. And that wasn't what happened to me. Mine came when I was crying out to whoever was up there. I'm sick and I'm ready to give up on life. And I walked up that hill and there were these balls of fire. And when they brought me back, life was different. I never had another symptom of Crohn's from that day forward. And for 17 years, I suffered. I took, you know, all these medications for it. And so it changed my life. And for the first 5 years, it was pretty dark of ridicule. But I held in there. You know, I'm one of these guys that's, if the sun's shining, I'm going to tell you the sun's shining, and it's nothing different. When I saw these lights and I had this experience, and I don't no longer have this Crohn's problem that nearly killed me, led me to a near death. That was my second one. When I was 10 years old, I was shot in the back, point blank, with a 20 gauge shotgun from 6 foot away. Blew a hole in me the size of an orange in my left shoulder. Nearly took out my heart and my spine. I still have 17 pieces of lead in my chest. I set the alarm off at the airport every time I go through. But that day when I came to after surgery, all I could remember was being in a clear, like an orb, a bubble, floating away from Earth. I was out in space, and I could look back and see Earth getting smaller. And I was in some sort of bubble, like a clear bubble. Couldn't see the walls, but I could feel them. And I woke up in the hospital, and boy, for a year I couldn't even move. I was like almost paralyzed from that.
I'm assuming that was a hunting accident that caused that?
It was hunting accident. I was 10 years old. My neighbor was 9, and his gun went off 6 foot away. And you know what? When I had my first regression with MUFON, sent this guy named Dr. Michael Connell. He was a Harvard-trained psychiatrist, I think. But when he did the regression, my headaches went away completely. I never had that problem thinking back anymore. And in that regression, it came out that when I was 10 years old, that they were with me then. It was the reason that I didn't die from that, I guess. That's what came out. And they took this Crohn's from me. It went away. And I'm still being treated. My doctor treats me for it. Up until this week, they changed my meds for the 4th time, but I've been treated. They thought that the the rheumatoid came back as from the Crohn's. In other words, it lay dormant and came back as rheumatoid. So I went to Chapel Hill, a big medical hospital, and they tested me again and said, no, it didn't. It was totally new, that was completely gone. And this new thing came about 6 years ago. 2012, when I had this experience, is when I started having trouble with rheumatoid. And that's been debilitating.
Got it. Now, you had mentioned, based on what you're telling me, that your contact experiences have generally been pretty positive. Maybe the fallout from people when you share them isn't always that good, but the experience, the direct experiences themselves are generally pretty positive. And To the Stars is framing this entire phenomenon, at least at some points, in terms of national security threat. There seems to be a little bit of a disconnect there. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, you know, that's just military. The military, there's a lot of military involved with Tom, and I think they're just protecting us and being safe about it. In other words, they don't know what we're dealing with, and this is what I said earlier. Most people want to say we have all this stuff. Well, I don't think we do, and I think that until we understand what's going on, that they're going to keep it that way. And to tell you the truth, there's both good and bad out there. However you align yourself, if you are positive and you take and in service to others and share a loving spirit and humble heart and a good person, I think you don't have nothing to worry about. But if you get into dark stuff and dark magic and negativity and have no foundation, well, you're allowing some very dark stuff that can come in and take your life. And spiritual, Frank, I've found out, well, let me say this. In the last 12 years, what I can prove is that I have probably, 1,000 maybe texts or emails that people share with me. They send me they won't report their thing to anyone. They just want to talk about it. And a lot of them are older folks, my age and some younger, but they just want to know what happened and tell me their experience. And so first thing I ask every time is, tell me about your life at that point when it first started happening. What was going on with you? What was going on with your life and your family? Just tell me where you were when it first started. And nearly every time, with the exception of one or two, all of them would tell me that they had a loss of a loved one, a mother, a father, a child, lost a husband, divorced, sick, cancer. But nearly every one of them will always start out by saying they were at the bottom and they were in suffering or in need or crying out in spirit. And that's when it comes. And it scares them to death. And they don't know what to react to. And then they listen to the UFO world and there's all this other stuff. So it confuses the heck out of everybody. And if I sit down and talk to these people long enough and share my experience with them and let them share, you'll find out all of them, it came out of compassion. Nearly all, unless it was on the dark side. And that's its own monster I don't want to delve into.
Understood. Now, one researcher that I know who's met with you directly and gone out and had experiences with you as well, and he's been pretty public about it, so I think we can talk about him a little bit. But he's a favorite of everyone. Certainly had a wonderful run as all this TTSA organization was sort of percolating into the public view. And that's Grant Cameron. Now, can you talk about Grant a little bit?
Yeah, Grant is my pal, and always will be. I met Grant, 20. Remember, I had this experience with the lady. For 5 years, I wouldn't talk. This is how this thing's gone. 5 years, from 2007 to 2012, I wouldn't speak. I just hated it. Everybody calling, I wouldn't answer the phone. I had this experience with this beautiful being, and I'm very reluctant to talk about experiencing an entity. But I have video to prove this. This is why I'm telling you. Not of her, but of other entities. Video. Walking. So immediately, within 2 weeks, I'd met Diana. And within 3 more weeks, I got an invitation to go to Philadelphia to a big party out of the blue. So I told Diana, so you want to go with me? They'll pay for it. They would pay for 10 people to get me to come. But sure enough, she went, my wife Yvonne went, and I met the folks there. And from that point on, it all changed. Shoot, I forgot where I was going with that.
Well, you had mentioned the party, and I'm kind of curious about that because I live not too far from there. Larry Frisella was the guy who threw the party. I mean, he's not really a government insider. I think you could probably talk about him a little bit. He's a very interesting guy, and that he's made a boatload of cash in the finance industry, and he's pursuing his interest in UFOs. He keeps kind of a low profile. I think he might be involved in financing James Fox's new documentary that's coming out sometime, I guess, within the next year or so. But Larry's a pretty interesting guy, and I would guess he's one of the more interesting folks you cross paths with. Can you tell the folks a little bit about Larry?
Well, you pretty much summed him up there. Larry is still a great friend of mine, and I can say after that party, I never met him there. He met my wife. He walked up to her and said, "Why did you give him so much trouble not believing him?" But I know he had so many people there we never met. So the party went and I left, and he calls me back. But let's go back to Grant Cameron. This is where I had a minute of this medication I take is biological immune therapy, and it messes with my short-term memory sometimes. But Grant, when I got off the plane for Larry's event, and this was a really fancy $250,000 party with like 100 people invited. It was exquisite. And when I got off the plane, there were people there with signs, led my wife and I and Dr. Pasolka to this bus. We get on this bus. I sat down right beside this guy. I reached over and I shook his hand. I told him my name. He said, "Hi, I'm Grant Cameron." And so I met him on the way to Larry's the very first day, getting off the plane at Philadelphia airport. And after that, after the party, during the party, Grant asked if he could come by and visit with me, that he would be at this Congress thing in Washington when they had this congressional thing.
Yes, yeah,
He
okay,
said,
yep.
He
I
said,
know what you're talking about.
Right. He said, "I'll be leaving there and going to Florida to another conference." So I said, "Sure." So he calls me. He stops by, stays 2 days, and we had a great time. Nothing. And I knew what was going on, but I didn't want to, impress this on Grant that he thought I was nuts or something. So 2 days went by, nothing goes on. Third day, the next week, or 3 or 4 days later, Grant calls me. He said, "I'm coming back from Florida, going back to Canada. You mind if I stop by again? I want to see this burning tree. I want to get some pictures of it." I said, "Sure." So when he comes back from Florida, and I'm waiting outside, my children are there, and there are half a dozen friends of theirs all total. Grant parks at the back door. You could drive alongside of my house to the back patio, and I was waiting on him. I said, "Pull up and park here." And so he gets out of the car. It's late afternoon. We walk straight out, about 100 yards out in the back of the property, to this burning tree. He's taken this tree that caught fire on its own 3 times. So as he's taking pictures, my Labrador, Nellie, was laying around our feet, follows me everywhere I go. She's dead now. Got run over by a car, and that's pretty amazing, because I got pictures of her after her death, and there's no denying it. So Grant takes all those photos, and here comes Nellie, Grant, and I back to the house walking. We get up to the back door to the patio, and all the kids are there. So we stop, and we're talking to them. Nellie's laying on the ground beside us. Finally said, "Grant, you want to get your bags, go in, use the restroom or anything, and gonna stay a couple of days?" And he's like, "Yes." So he turns to go towards the back door, which is 20 feet away or less, and he's in front of me. Nellie is laying on the ground beside me. Something happened. Paranormal is all we can say. But this dog, when she stands up, something, and we believe it was just for something to said, tell me something. Let's just say that. This is what the people involved said. It was all a message for you. So when Nellie stands up and walks, when Grant turns and walks to the door, Nellie stands up and tries to go by Grant and beat him to the door. You know how dogs will want to rush in front of you and go in the door. Well, the minute she did that, we don't know what happened, but all of a sudden, her neck, on the right side of her neck, a hole appeared the size of an inch and a half hole right across her blood vein, jugular vein. And blood was shooting out of her neck everywhere. It went by Grant, got blood all over his jeans, his shoes, the patio. She ran in the back door, and I'm panicking. I ran in behind her and tackled her on the hardwood floor, blood slipping and sliding. I pick her up in my arms. I take her back outside and lay her on the patio, and I'm looking up, and Grant's eyes are big as saucers. He didn't know what to think. We couldn't figure it out. And oh my God, she's going to die. I can't call an ambulance. I was going through all this stuff. What do we do? And I shouted for my son. I said, son, go get me a towel, something. Because I always thought you need to put compression. Well, I had my hand on her wound, on her neck. And blood, every time her heart would beat, blood would come up, bubbling up through my fingers and stuff. And Grant's looking at me and looking at this happening. And so I just kind of cried out, Lord, what do I do? And all of a sudden, this feeling came over me, and the dog relaxed. It just, instead of it being tensed up and everything, she just kind of relaxed, and I felt it. And when I picked my hand up, there was no more cut. There was no blood. There was no hole. There was nothing. And so that's kind of a short story of what happened with the encounter with Grant and I. And these friends from Florida and other places caught wind of that and said, oh my, this was a sign for you. So that put me on a path for the next, since then, working with people, trying to help sick people. And there's been some success, I have to say. I have people that were, I just can't use names, but there were people that were sick that had miracles. One lady, I think I shared with Chant, that she was in a coma and they didn't think she would make it until the next morning. And one of the ladies called me there, panicked. Her best friend was in a coma dying, and asked me would I do what I could. And I just cried out to these beings. The same ones that took my Crohn's away. The same ones that appear in the sky. When I walk out the door, the sky light up and they start zooming about. Orbs, which when I say orbs, we're talking UFOs, big as a school bus, some of these. And they just crisscross the sky. Some of them fly up like the one over Easter within 25 feet and stop, comes out of the sky. So anyhow, I asked these orbs to help this lady, not knowing her from anything. Next day, I get a call, and she woke up out of her coma, and another day, she was home. And the doctor said it was a miracle. So was it me? No. Did it come because I asked? I think it might have. I don't take nothing is about me, understand? It's not about me. It's about a connection to something very special that hears everything we say, think, and do. It knows what you think before you can think it. And if you can't get a picture of it, it's because it won't let you. If you don't get a video, it's because it won't let you. A lot of the videos you see out there are just satellites and stuff.
Sure.
But if you want to, it's got to let you, if it's to be seen public. And I know this to be true. But that's about all I can say there. But there's people from Washington, D.C. and other places that have called and flown me up to help children and different things. And so all this is totally unknown by most of the whole UFO world, because I've not been out seeking recognition. It's not about me. I'm not trying to sell books. And I'll write a book eventually, and when I do, I'll know more confident about what is going on. because to say you know what's going on, the people I deal with just rolls their eyes because it's so complex and it's so there's nobody really knows. But I do know it works off compassion, vibration, our senses. It's listening to us, observing us, watching us, 24/7.
Now, more recently, within the last couple of months, the string physicist Michio Kaku had stated that it's really up to the government at this point. We've got enough evidence. It's up to the government at this point to come out and prove that this phenomenon is not extraterrestrial in nature. And when I say extraterrestrial, I mean that in a very broad sense. You know, it's not of this place and time, this planet and time. But regardless of all that, how do you feel about that? Do you think that science needs to get more involved in this sort of thing and try to study it a little bit better and get a better grip on it?
Well, absolutely. And that's one reason Tom is bringing this to the world, to try to get more involvement and more acceptance and funding. And of course, the military is saying it might be hostile. Well, that's the military's thing. That's what they do. They're going to protect us first. So, I don't see anything there. But I do know that it is real. They know it's real. What it is, we don't know, but we're trying to figure it out. And there are a lot of scientists working on it and have been. But I think it's a whole new world. I think now it's going to be the debate. It's just like Michio said, it's not about is it real anymore, that we're past that. It's about what are we dealing with. And I'm afraid it's so complex, we'll never figure it out. It's dimensions, other dimensions, layers. Has a very short lifespan. Some animals 10 years or less, some creatures a week. Humans about 50 or 60 years on average worldwide. And it's been going on for millions of years. Humans have been on this planet for millions and millions. They find artifacts hundreds of millions of years old. And you think they figured it out? No. We're not the first, and we won't be the last.
And sorry, keep going. Sorry about that.
I was just saying, I think that these beings are what creates us all, or keeps us in check, or keeps life evolving. It didn't happen by chance. Anybody that thinks that needs their head examined. It's too complex, life is. Can't get a chicken from a dinosaur, or a human from an elephant, or vice versa. It don't work that way. And for them to tell us that is totally wrong. So I think you'll see all that disappear, this evolution thing, and be more about, of course, and some scientists might argue that. That's okay. I still believe there's a creator. I still believe that something created it all and that it's all a simulation, more or less. That the real world is the eternal world around us and we're in a simulation. That's more about what I believe. That and we're in a place where everything eats itself. We eat animals and animals eat us, and it's just a terrible. If you were in a video game and you had to pick the world you wanted to believe in or be in or be a part of, this one isn't a really nice one to be in. The suffering, the amount of suffering is ungodly. Millions die and starve and are butchered. You know, the Americans have it made. But for the most part, it's a pretty cruel world. So
life feeds off of life, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, even if you don't eat meat, I mean, vegetable, plant life is alive. So,
Yeah, exactly.
So well, now to wrap up, I really appreciate you coming on and spending. I don't know how things are down in North Carolina today, but it's a beautiful day here, and we don't want to keep everybody inside listening. Get outside and enjoy the day. I don't know how the weather is down there, but it's beautiful here. For the folks at home, you've got some insight into all this. Where do you think we're going to be with all this, say, in another 6 months, 12 months? Do you think we're going to be much further ahead than where we're at now, or we're going to keep getting these really significant bits of information drop? What do you see coming up over the next several months?
There's not going to be any disclosure because, I mean, what are we going to disclose other than anything significant? I think you'll have announcements from here and there, and Tom has some pretty amazing stuff coming up. But it's all a work in progress. It's just, but yeah, we're getting closer to, I would say, mainstream understanding that there is something out there, but what? You know, that's a whole nother story. What?
Got it. And you basically think that the increased public acceptance as a result of To the Stars Academy and the I'm assuming you think that's generally a positive.
Absolutely, I do. If we're going to ever learn what we're dealing with or bring attention to it, it would be Tom. Tom's the one. Where would we be without To the Stars today? We'd still be, you know, fighting over are they Pleiadians or Zetas or some of that stuff, you know. But at least Tom has brought a lot to front and center, and he deserves recognition for it. I would truly say that. It's made my life better. It's made the people around me more accepting, less ridicule. I thank them for that. Now people come up to me and like, man, they want to apologize. A lot of people, and so that's the positive thing that's coming, and it's just a whole new world ahead. And I think as people become more aware of this, it becomes more aware of us, and will begin to appear more likely. An old friend from Cape Canaveral told me, because I asked him, I said, sir, why is it when I go to visit people, a group, say, and I do a lot of group meetings with a little group of ladies that has a sick friend that calls me, would you come Saturday night, 2 hours from here? They'll fix dinner and cake and coffee, and we'll hope this friend gets a blessing, or it's just sharing the story. And then all of a sudden I go home and they call me, oh my God, we got pictures of this UFO that appeared in the sky over my driveway, or this or that. Just people are seeing it. And my friend from down there told me, NASA, he said, it's because there's a switch in our brain called like a truth switch. Once a person really believes you, instead of doubting you, they'll stop and start to believe it and understand. Then it opens the door to experiencing it. But if you totally reject it and you're negative and closed-minded, you'll never see it. I promise you. I can bring people here that are negative to my house, then nothing will appear. But if they come here with excitement and knowing that it's real, but they just want to see it, well, then it will appear, most likely. And it does often. I mean, a good friend of mine, Vincent Jenna, I met him with George Norrie in Vegas last year. He lives in Raleigh. He comes to visit, and we walk out the door, and 7 different objects appeared. I mean, immediately, and went zooming about in the sky. And so, but he's the kind of person that's not denying it, and that's not, a skeptic. He was open to it. And so, and see, don't it appear? If it doesn't, just keep trying.
Oh. And that's how it works with. One last question for you, Chris. At the root of this all, we do have this phenomenon, and it is ambiguous. It is curious. It doesn't manifest itself before everyone. It kind of picks its spots. Do you have any thoughts about this? Because this whole phenomenon, this whole mystery, could be cleared up in a heartbeat by those who are behind it, those who are really behind it. I mean, not the government or the military who might be able to gather some data here and there. They could easily, instead of appearing before you in North Carolina, you mentioned you live in kind of a rural area, they could easily do it over a football stadium with 100,000 people, yet they choose not to. Do you have any thoughts on that? Why they have this protocol, this technique?
Yeah, because I think I do. I look at this thing, and a lot of people criticize me because they honestly believe I'm some sort of religious fanatic, or that I'm selling religion. It couldn't be further from the truth. I haven't been to church in 10 or 12 years, but it doesn't mean I don't have that foundation that, I believe in something greater. But I believe it's about good versus evil, light versus dark, negative and positive, just like a battery, a car battery. This earth is just a dipole. It's creating electricity, and we're swimming in electricity. I can scrub my feet on the floor and touch you and send a positive shock, or you can receive the other end of it. So the system we live in is based on polarity, positive and negative. So whatever we're dealing with is based the same way. There may be other things out there that we're just not aware of that's coming here too. But there's still that good versus bad. You do wrong. There are entities around us that can infect your mind and make you miserable and make you go out and do bad things, steal, kill, all kinds of things. And to say it doesn't happen is very false. I can tell you, it's real. And there's proof to it. I have a friend that's an ex-priest that works on the Dead Sea Scroll projects, and he has videos when he was doing exorcisms of some crazy stuff that would make your hair stand up. But I don't know, Frank. I don't want to label anything because I'm not. But I really believe it's about good versus evil, light and dark, and a mix in between. Who knows? I'm studying it just like everybody else, and I study it with a lot of scientists and very smart people. And a lot of times they're expecting me to tell them, and I'm expecting them to tell me, and I haven't found anybody yet that can tell me anything. Orbs, a lot of these orbs, I get pictures of orbs, photos and videos of orbs flying around the yard, some very close. And in those orbs are people, animals. Some you can see them looking at me and me at them. And who are they? Where are they from? Is that the eternal world? My dog is in one of these orbs. Other animals. So, I don't know. I don't mean to get off subject, but there's a lot more we can share, and maybe on another interview sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. I sure do appreciate you giving us this exclusive here as you're kind of making your comeback and talking a little bit more openly. Appreciate you taking the time and spending your Sunday afternoon with us. It was a blast. I'm so glad you did this, Chris. Thank you so very much.
Well, you're the first one in 4 or 5 years, Frank. Seriously.
Well, yeah, I know Chant hooked it up, and we were talking a couple days ago, but something came up at the last minute. But I know she'll be listening as soon as she gets the chance, and I hope everybody gives a listen because it was a fascinating interview. You shared a lot of great information, and good luck to you in these future projects regarding the TV production, and frankly, whatever you decide to do, I wish you the best with it. Thanks so much.
I appreciate it, Frank, and I hate Chant couldn't be here, but I understand.
Yeah, she's here in spirit, and she hooked us up. So thanks so much to her. And everybody, obviously, we've been cutting back a little bit, maybe not taking a 5-year break. We don't want to go that long, but we've been taking a little bit of a break. Things have slowed up a little bit. We've got some irons in the fire. So the rumors of the show's demise has been greatly exaggerated. We'll be back with more, and everybody go out and enjoy your Sunday. I hope your weather's as nice where you're at, where it is here, because it looks fantastic outside. Thanks, everybody. You have a good one, and we'll be talking at you soon. Bye-bye now.